Springfield, Missouri, May 17, 2005. A seemingly ordinary Tuesday that would mark the beginning of one of the most perplexing cases in the city's recent history. The day began like any other at Roosevelt High School. Students filed into their morning classes, the hallways bustling with activity. But by second period, something was amiss. Amber Lockwood's American history class sat empty, waiting for their typically punctual teacher who never arrived. Amber, 34, had been teaching at Roosevelt for 7 years. Colleagues described her as meticulous and reliable, someone who would call in at the first sign of illness or emergency. Her absence that morning was immediately noticed. "It wasn't like her at all," said Principal Darlene Winters. Amber was the kind of teacher who arrived 30 minutes early and often stayed well past dismissal. When she didn't show up and didn't call, we knew something was wrong. The school's administrative assistant attempted to reach Amber by phone throughout the morning. Calls went straight to voicemail. By noon, the school contacted Amber's emergency contact, her sister, Vanessa Lockwood Reyes. Vanessa hadn't heard from Amber since their Sunday night phone call. "We spoke every evening, without fail," Vanessa later told investigators. "When she didn't call on Monday, I texted her. I figured she was busy grading papers or something. I never imagined." Concern escalated when Vanessa drove to Amber's modest 2-bedroom apartment in the Oak Ridge neighborhood that evening. Amber's blue Honda Civic was parked in its usual spot. The newspaper from Monday remained in its plastic sleeve on the doorstep. A second paper had joined it Tuesday morning. What Vanessa discovered inside the apartment only deepened the mystery. No signs of struggle or forced entry. Amber's phone charger remained plugged in beside her bed, but her phone was missing. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter, wallet intact with credit cards and $47 in cash. A half-empty cup of tea sat on the coffee table, a thin film covering its surface. The apartment showed no indications of planned departure, no packed suitcase, no missing clothes. The air conditioning was still running. A stack of ungraded student essays sat on the dining table, alongside a red grading pen and Amber's half-finished lesson plans for the week. Everything looked normal, Vanessa recounted, except Amber wasn't there. By Wednesday morning, with Amber absent from work for a second consecutive day and unreachable by anyone who knew her, the Springfield Police Department officially classified her as a missing person. Detective Trent Mitchell, a 13-year veteran of the department's major crimes unit, was assigned to the case. Mitchell's initial assessment suggested no obvious signs of foul play, but the circumstances were troubling. "Adults have the right to disappear if they want to," Mitchell noted in his preliminary report, "but they typically take their phone, wallet, and car. Ms. Lockwood left behind all the essentials one would need to start over somewhere else." The detective's first task was constructing a timeline. Amber had last been seen on Sunday afternoon at a local farmer's market by a colleague. Security footage from a convenience store 3 blocks from her apartment captured her purchasing milk and bread Sunday evening at 7:36 p.m. Her sister confirmed their phone conversation ended at approximately 9:15 p.m. After that, Amber Lockwood seemingly vanished. The investigation gained an unexpected dimension when Mitchell interviewed Amber's neighbors. Most described her as friendly but private, a woman who would wave and exchange pleasantries, but rarely engaged in extended conversations. But one neighbor, Corinne Palmer, shared information that would dramatically alter the course of the investigation. "Amber seemed different the last time I saw her," Palmer told Detective Mitchell. "It was Sunday morning around 11. She was taking out her recycling when I was walking my dog. She seemed excited about something, almost nervous. She mentioned she'd made an interesting discovery about the man in the blue house. That's what stuck with me because she never gossiped about neighbors." The blue house in question belonged to Leland Haynes, a relatively new arrival to the neighborhood who had moved in approximately 8 months prior. Haynes, whom neighbors described as polite but reserved, lived alone in the 2-story colonial at the end of the street. Few in the neighborhood knew much about him beyond basic pleasantries. When pressed for details, Palmer recalled that Amber had leaned in, lowering her voice despite no one else being nearby. She said, "You wouldn't believe who he really is," but wouldn't elaborate. She mentioned wanting to confirm something first, said she had been researching, "That's all I know." Mitchell's interest was immediately piqued. A cursory background check on Leland Haynes revealed a remarkably sparse history. A man who seemingly materialized out of thin air 8 months ago. His listed previous address in Portland, Oregon checked out, but records there only went back 3 years. Employment history showed him as a retired logistics consultant for various international shipping companies. Credit history, driver's license, tax records, all appeared in order, but lacked the depth one would expect from a man in his late 60s. A more thorough search through federal databases yielded nothing concerning on the surface. Haynes had no criminal record, no outstanding warrants, no red flags in any system accessible to local law enforcement. His paper trail was immaculate, perhaps too immaculate. Mitchell's investigation intensified when Amber's laptop was examined. Her browser history revealed multiple searches about the Federal Bureau of Investigation, specifically related to undercover operations in the 1980s and early 1990s. Several searches specifically referenced Operation Shadowcast, a classified counterintelligence initiative that had been partially declassified in recent years. More tellingly, Amber had accessed archived newspaper articles about a series of controversial FBI operations during the Cold War. One particular article from 1994 featured a grainy photograph of agents involved in a major Soviet counterintelligence bust. Though the faces were partially obscured, one agent bore a striking resemblance to a younger version of Leland Haynes. The most recent search in Amber's history, time-stamped at 10:27 p.m. on Sunday night, after her call with her sister, was for FBI Witness Protection Program. Mitchell's preliminary interviews with Leland Haynes raised more questions than answers. Haynes expressed appropriate concern about his neighbor's disappearance, but maintained he barely knew her. When asked about his whereabouts on Monday and Tuesday, he provided a detailed account of his activities: grocery shopping, a doctor's appointment, and an afternoon at the local library, all of which would later be confirmed by security footage and witnesses. Yet something about Haynes's demeanor struck Mitchell as carefully calculated. His answers came too readily, his alibi too perfectly constructed. He expressed just the right amount of neighborly concern without appearing overly invested. As Mitchell prepared to leave Haynes's immaculately kept home, he noticed a small detail that would later prove significant. On a side table near the entryway sat a collection of framed photographs. Haynes fishing in Montana, Haynes at what appeared to be a retirement party, Haynes with an elderly golden retriever. But unlike most personal photographs, these seemed new, the frames free of dust, the images crisp and professional. What Mitchell couldn't know as he left the Blue House that day was that his straightforward missing persons case was about to evolve into something far more complex. The disappearance of Amber Lockwood wasn't simply about a teacher who vanished without warning. It was the first visible thread in a tapestry of secrets that stretched back decades, involving government operations, classified information, and a man who had spent a lifetime making certain parts of his past disappear. As night fell on that third day of Amber's disappearance, Detective Mitchell returned to the station to file his preliminary report. The final line read, "Subject's interest in neighbor L. Haynes immediately preceding disappearance warrants further investigation. Background on Haynes appears suspiciously curated, requesting deeper federal database access." What Mitchell would soon discover about the man in the Blue House would change everything about the case and explain why Amber Lockwood may have become a threat that needed to be eliminated. As dawn broke on the fourth day of Amber Lockwood's disappearance, Detective Trent Mitchell found himself staring at a photograph pinned to the investigation board. The image showed Leland Haynes collecting his mail, an ordinary moment captured by a traffic camera installed at the neighborhood intersection. There was nothing inherently suspicious about the man in the frame, yet something about Haynes's meticulously constructed life nagged at Mitchell's investigative instincts. The detective's request for deeper federal database access had been approved overnight, a process that typically took days if not weeks. The unusual expediency raised Mitchell's suspicions further. Someone in the federal system had flagged this case as high priority. By 9 a.m., Mitchell and his partner, Detective Sophia Ramirez, arrived at the Springfield Public Records Office. They needed to establish when exactly Leland Haynes had appeared in Springfield and what paper trail he'd left behind. "Property records show he purchased the house on Oak Ridge Lane 8 months ago," Ramirez noted, paging through the documents. "Paid in cash. Previous address listed in Portland checks out, but only goes back 3 years. Before that, he supposedly lived in Chicago, but those records are sparse." Mitchell nodded. "Let's look at utilities, tax records, everything. I want to know how deeply this identity has been established." The records painted a picture of a man who materialized in Springfield as a fully formed citizen, with all the appropriate documentation but little substance behind it. Haynes had opened local bank accounts, registered to vote, obtained a library card, and even joined the Community Garden Association. Yet no one in the neighborhood could recall a single substantive conversation with him. "It's like he's following a checklist of how to appear normal," Ramirez observed. Back at the station, Mitchell received a call from the FBI field office in Kansas City. Special Agent Diana Keller had been assigned as liaison to the Lockwood case. "Detective Mitchell, I understand you've been making inquiries about a Leland Haynes," Keller said, her tone measured. "I'm calling to inform you that we're taking an interest in your missing persons case." Mitchell had expected this. "May I ask why the Bureau is suddenly concerned with a local disappearance? Let's just say Mr. Haynes has an administrative history with our organization. I'll be driving down to Springfield this afternoon. I suggest we postpone further questioning of Haynes until I arrive." Mitchell agreed, but he wasn't about to sit idle. Returning to Amber's apartment with a forensics team, he instructed them to search for anything that might indicate what she had discovered about her neighbor. The breakthrough came in an unexpected form. Behind Amber's bookshelf, tucked between the wall and the furniture, the team found a small notebook. Inside were detailed observations about Leland Haynes, times he left home, visitors to his residence, license plate numbers, and patterns of behavior. The entries dated back nearly 3 months. "She wasn't just curious about him," Mitchell told Ramirez as they examined the notebook. "She was conducting surveillance." The most recent entry was from Sunday afternoon. Confirmed LH identity through archived news footage. Operation Nightshade, 1988-1992. "Will contact JB at Tribune tomorrow for background verification." Mitchell immediately requested phone records for Amber's missing cell phone. The logs showed a call placed Monday morning at 7:15 a.m. to a number belonging to Jason Brenner, an investigative journalist at the Springfield Tribune. When contacted, Brenner confirmed receiving a brief call from Amber. She wanted to meet about a story tip, something about a former federal agent living under a new identity in Springfield. She was cagey about details, said she needed to show me something in person. We arranged to meet at Westside Coffee at noon, but she never showed. Security footage from Westside Coffee confirmed Brenner waited alone for nearly an hour before leaving. Amber never appeared for their meeting. By late afternoon, Special Agent Keller arrived at the Springfield Police Department. Mitchell immediately noted her composed demeanor and the way she carefully examined the evidence board without revealing any reaction. "Detective, what you've stumbled into is complicated," Keller began, choosing her words deliberately. "Leland Haynes is not his birth name. The man you're investigating previously worked for the Bureau in a specialized capacity." "He was an agent," Mitchell stated flatly. "More than that. He was part of a counterintelligence unit during the late Cold War period. His work was classified at the highest levels. And now he's living in suburban Missouri under an assumed name. Why?" Keller's expression remained neutral. "Former agents who worked in certain capacities are sometimes given new identities upon retirement for their protection. Is Haynes in witness protection? Not officially. His situation falls under a different protocol." Keller paused. "Detective, I need to be clear. This investigation needs to proceed with extreme discretion. If Haynes is who we believe he is, his former targets still have resources and motivations to harm him." Mitchell studied the agent's face. "With all due respect, Agent Keller, my concern is finding Amber Lockwood. If Haynes's past put her in danger, that's my priority." "They may be connected," Keller acknowledged. "If Ms. Lockwood discovered Haynes's true identity, she may have inadvertently exposed him to risk. That could have triggered protocols." "Are you suggesting Haynes might have taken action against Amber to protect his cover?" Keller didn't answer directly. "Let's interview him together. But tread carefully, Detective. Men with his training don't react well to direct confrontation." As they prepared to leave, Mitchell received a call from the forensics lab. Analysis of Amber's laptop had revealed something interesting. She had accessed a series of encrypted files using specialized software typically used by investigative journalists. The files contained partially redacted FBI documents that had been leaked online years earlier. She wasn't just guessing about Haynes, Mitchell told Keller. She found actual documentation. The blue house at the end of Oak Ridge Lane looked particularly unassuming in the fading afternoon light. As Mitchell and Keller approached, they noticed the curtains were drawn, unlike during Mitchell's previous visit. They knocked. No answer. After a second attempt, Mitchell called for a patrol unit to establish surveillance on the house while they obtained a search warrant. "I'm not letting him disappear on us," he told Keller. The search warrant came through by early evening. When officers entered the house, they found it immaculate and completely empty of personal belongings. Leland Haynes had vanished, taking with him any evidence of his presence. But he had left one thing behind. On the kitchen counter sat a single business card for a storage facility on the outskirts of town. Scrawled on the back in precise handwriting were the words, "She shouldn't have been watching." As night fell on the fourth day of Amber's disappearance, the investigation had transformed entirely. They weren't just looking for a missing teacher anymore. They were hunting a former federal agent with decades of training in how to disappear, who might have eliminated the one person who had uncovered his carefully constructed facade. What neither Mitchell nor Keller could anticipate was how deep this case would go, or how many more secrets remained buried in Leland Haynes's past. Secrets that would soon emerge from a hidden archive that Amber Lockwood had somehow managed to locate before she vanished. The storage facility on Springfield's eastern outskirts was a sprawling complex of identical orange metal units arranged in neat rows. At 7:30 a.m., Detective Mitchell and Agent Keller arrived with a search warrant for Unit B147, the number printed on the reverse of the business card found in Haynes's abandoned house. "This feels deliberate," Mitchell said as they approached the unit. "Why leave us a breadcrumb?" Keller's expression remained guarded. It could be a trap or a diversion. The facility manager cut the padlock on the unit. As the metal door rolled upward, both investigators instinctively stepped back, hands moving toward their weapons. But there was no threat waiting inside, only a single metal filing cabinet pushed against the back wall. The cabinet contained personnel files spanning decades, all bearing FBI watermarks, all heavily redacted, yet clearly authentic. Most pertained to a classified operation codenamed Nightshade that ran from 1987 to 1993, focused on counterintelligence against Soviet assets embedded in American research institutions. "These are authentic Bureau documents," Keller confirmed, her voice tight. "Highly classified, they shouldn't be here." One file contained photographs of a younger Leland Haynes, except the name on the file read Agent Maxwell Reed. The resemblance was unmistakable despite the 30-year gap. The documentation detailed Reed's recruitment from military intelligence, his specialized training in counter-surveillance, and his deployment as part of Operation Nightshade. He was hunting Soviet moles in American universities, Mitchell noted, scanning the heavily redacted mission reports, specifically targeting scientific research programs. Keller nodded grimly. Nightshade was one of our most successful counterintelligence operations. The team identified 17 deep-cover Soviet agents who had infiltrated advanced physics and computer science programs across the country. So why is a decorated former agent hiding in Springfield under a false identity? The answer came from a thin file folder tucked at the back of the drawer. Unlike the others, this document bore no official FBI markings. Instead, it appeared to be a private intelligence report dated 2002, detailing the activities of a group called The Enterprise, an unauthorized network of former intelligence operatives offering their services to private clients. "This is concerning," Keller said, her professional composure momentarily slipping. "If authentic, this suggests that Reed or Haynes became involved with a shadow operation after leaving official service." The report listed operations conducted by this network, including corporate espionage, surveillance of political activists, and, most disturbingly, problem resolution services, a euphemism whose meaning seemed clear in context. The final document in the cabinet was the most alarming, a handwritten journal that appeared to belong to Amber Lockwood. The most recent entry was dated May 15, 2005, just 2 days before her disappearance. "I've confirmed it. The man in the blue house is Maxwell Reed, former FBI counterintelligence. But he didn't retire as the official records claim. The Enterprise documents show he's been working off books for nearly a decade. Their client list includes names that would shock the public, politicians, CEOs, even a federal judge. I need to get this information to someone trustworthy. Meeting with Jason tomorrow. After that, I'll decide whether to contact authorities. I've made digital copies of everything as insurance." Mitchell looked up from the journal. She knew, and she made copies. "Which means there might be evidence elsewhere," Keller added. "Evidence Haynes, Reed, hasn't found yet." Back at the station, Mitchell ordered a complete forensic examination of Amber's apartment, focusing on potential hiding places for digital storage devices. Meanwhile, he instructed officers to compile surveillance footage from every camera in a 10-block radius around Amber's apartment complex, focused on the 48-hour window surrounding her disappearance. By mid-afternoon, The technical team recovered deleted emails from Amber's laptop, showing correspondence with an anonymous account using encrypted messaging. The exchanges revealed that Amber had been receiving information from someone inside the FBI, a whistleblower concerned about former agents operating outside official channels. She had help from inside the bureau, Mitchell told Keller, watching her reaction closely. The agent's expression remained professionally neutral. That's a serious allegation, Detective. It's not an allegation. It's what the evidence shows. Mitchell pushed the printouts toward her. The question is whether your presence here is about finding Amber Lockwood or containing a potential scandal. Before Keller could respond, Mitchell's phone rang. The forensics team had discovered something in Amber's apartment, a small micro SD card hidden inside a hollowed-out history book on her shelf. The card contained scanned copies of all the documents they'd found in the storage unit, plus additional files not included in the physical archive. Among these extra files was a surveillance report on Amber herself, dated May 14th, 3 days before her disappearance. The report detailed her movements, her research activities, and her communication patterns. It concluded with a simple assessment. Subject has accessed restricted information. Containment recommended. He was watching her while she was watching him, Mitchell said grimly. And then he decided to contain the situation. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. Traffic camera footage from early Monday morning showed a dark sedan passing through an intersection 2 blocks from Amber's apartment at 4:17 a.m. The vehicle's license plate matched a rental car obtained by Leland Haynes under a different name 3 days earlier. Additional cameras tracked the vehicle heading northwest out of the city toward the Mark Twain National Forest. The last sighting was at a gas station near the forest boundary at 5:43 a.m. He took her into the forest, Mitchell said, mapping the route. Over 225,000 acres of wilderness, if he wanted to make someone disappear permanently. Keller was already on the phone, mobilizing FBI resources. We need search teams, tracking dogs, and aerial support focused on the northwest quadrant of Mark Twain National Forest. Suspect should be considered armed and extremely dangerous. As law enforcement assembled for what might become a recovery operation, rather than a rescue, Mitchell received another call from the technical team. They had managed to recover deleted cloud backup data from Amber's accounts, including her final phone communications. The last text message she sent was to her sister, Vanessa, at 11:42 p.m. Sunday night. If anything happens to me, the truth is with Milo. Who's Milo? Keller asked. Mitchell was already moving. Her cat. Vanessa took him after Amber disappeared. At Vanessa's home, they found Milo wearing what appeared to be an ordinary collar. But when Mitchell examined it closely, he discovered a small USB drive ingeniously concealed within the buckle. The drive contained a video file recorded by Amber herself, sitting in her living room, speaking directly to the camera. The timestamp showed 11:15 p.m. Sunday night. "My name is Amber Lockwood," she began, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "If you're watching this, something has happened to me. 2 months ago, I began investigating my neighbor, Leland Haynes, after noticing unusual patterns in his behavior. What I discovered was that Haynes is actually Maxwell Reed, a former FBI counterintelligence operative who now works for a private network of ex-intelligence agents called the Enterprise." She held up documents to the camera, displaying evidence of operations conducted against journalists, activists, and whistleblowers. These people operate without oversight, targeting American citizens on behalf of wealthy clients. I've compiled evidence showing that Reed personally handled at least 3 individuals who later disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances. The video continued for nearly 15 minutes, as Amber methodically presented her evidence, including photographs, documents, and financial records, showing payments to Reed from various shell companies. "I believe I've been compromised," she concluded. "Tonight I noticed a car passing my apartment multiple times. My internet connection briefly cut out, and I suspect my communications are being monitored. I'm leaving copies of everything I've found in multiple locations. If I disappear, this isn't a coincidence or an accident. Maxwell Reed eliminated people who threatened to expose him before. I may be next." As the video ended, Mitchell and Keller exchanged glances. They now had evidence not only of Amber's investigation, but of her fear for her own safety in the days before she vanished. More importantly, they had documented evidence of a criminal conspiracy involving former federal agents. Within hours, the FBI officially classified Amber Lockwood's disappearance as a kidnapping investigation, and issued a nationwide alert for Maxwell Reed, alias Leland Haynes. His photograph was distributed to law enforcement agencies across the country, Border Patrol was notified, and his identifiers were flagged in all federal databases. What they couldn't know was that Reed had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario, and that he had resources and connections extending far beyond what even Agent Keller suspected. As the search expanded into the National Forest, Reed was already implementing a contingency plan that would test the full resources of law enforcement and reveal just how deep the rabbit hole of the enterprise truly went. And somewhere in the vast wilderness of the Mark Twain National Forest, the answer to what happened to Amber Lockwood was waiting to be discovered. A truth that would shock even the most seasoned investigators. The command center for the search operation hummed with activity as the fifth day of Amber Lockwood's disappearance began. Large maps of Mark Twain National Forest covered the walls, with red pins marking areas already searched, and blue pins indicating priority locations based on terrain analysis. Search teams had been deployed at first light, accompanied by cadaver dogs and forensic specialists. Detective Mitchell stood before the evidence board, connecting threads between photographs, documents, and timeline markers. The portrait of Maxwell Reed, the man they now knew as Leland Haynes, occupied the center position, surrounded by satellite images of potential locations within the forest where someone with tactical training might take a captive. Reed was meticulous, Mitchell observed to Agent Keller, who was coordinating with FBI technical specialists. Every move calculated. The question is whether leaving that storage unit key was a mistake or deliberate. Keller frowned. No one with his background makes that kind of mistake. He wanted us to find those files. But why? If he took Amber because she discovered his identity, why lead us to evidence confirming it? The answer arrived unexpectedly when Mitchell's phone rang. The technical team analyzing Amber's digital footprint had discovered something significant, a hidden partition on her laptop containing encrypted files that had only just been decrypted. "You need to see this immediately," the tech specialist said, urgency evident in his voice. The hidden files revealed the true depth of Amber's investigation. Beyond identifying Reed, she had mapped connections between the enterprise and powerful figures in business and government. Financial records showed millions flowing through offshore accounts to former intelligence operatives for services ranging from surveillance to what was euphemistically termed problem resolution. Most disturbingly, Amber had compiled a list of individuals who had died under suspicious circumstances after investigating or threatening to expose aspects of the enterprise's operations. A journalist who suffered a robbery gone wrong in Chicago, a corporate whistleblower who died in an accidental house fire in Seattle, a former intelligence analyst who committed suicide despite no history of mental health issues. She wasn't just investigating Reed, Mitchell realized. She was building a case against the entire network. Among the files was an audio recording of a phone conversation Amber had with Jason Brenner, the journalist, the day before her disappearance. "Jason, what I'm sending you is explosive," her voice came through clearly. "The Enterprise isn't just a rogue operation. It has protection from inside the government. I've identified at least 3 current FBI officials who maintain connections to the network, helping to steer investigations away from their activities." Brenner's response was cautious. "Amber, if what you're saying is true, these people won't hesitate to protect themselves. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" "I don't have a choice," she replied. "They already know I'm investigating. My computer was remotely accessed yesterday. Someone has been in my apartment. Things moved slightly. Not enough to notice if you weren't looking. I'm being watched. The only protection I have now is making sure this information gets out." Mitchell turned to Keller, studying her reaction. 3 current FBI officials connected to the Enterprise. Did you know about this?" Keller's expression remained professionally composed, but Mitchell noticed a subtle tension in her posture. "No, but it would explain how Reed has stayed ahead of us. He's being protected." Before Mitchell could respond, his phone rang again. A search team in the northwestern quadrant of the forest had discovered an abandoned hunting cabin, showing signs of recent occupation. More significantly, they'd found Amber Lockwood's missing cell phone discarded in the undergrowth nearby. As Mitchell and Keller drove toward the forest, technical specialists continued analyzing the recovered phone. Though it had been factory reset, they managed to recover fragments of data from the phone's cache, including location metadata from the hours before Amber disappeared. The data painted a disturbing picture. At 3:27 a.m. on Monday morning, the phone had moved from Amber's apartment toward the forest, matching the time frame when Reed's rental car was captured on traffic cameras. The phone's final active location before being reset was deep within the forest, near the hunting cabin the search team had discovered. At the cabin, forensic technicians had already begun processing the scene. The single-room structure was Spartan, but showed clear evidence of recent use: food wrappers, bottled water, and most tellingly, zip ties attached to the legs of a heavy wooden chair in the center of the room. Someone was restrained here, the lead forensic technician told Mitchell, pointing to subtle scratch marks on the wooden floor beside the chair. And based on the depth and angle of these marks, they were struggling. Outside, K9 units had picked up a scent trail leading from the cabin into the dense forest. The handlers reported that the dog's behavior indicated they were tracking human remains. Mitchell felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. If Reed killed her, why go through the trouble of moving the body from the cabin? To buy time, Keller suggested. The longer it takes to find her, the colder the trail gets. The search team followed the dogs through increasingly difficult terrain until they reached a small clearing. In the center, partially covered with branches and forest debris, was a shallow grave. The recovery team worked carefully, documenting every detail before extracting the remains. But the body they uncovered wasn't Amber Lockwood. Male, approximately 60 to 70 years old, the medical examiner reported, examining the decomposing corpse. Gunshot wound to the back of the head, execution style, been here maybe 3 days. Forensic technicians took fingerprints from the body. Within hours they had a match, but not to anyone connected to the case. The prints match a Walter Simmons, Keller reported, reading from her tablet. Former CIA operations officer who officially retired in 1997. No record of activity since then. Another Enterprise operative, Mitchell suggested. Likely, and based on the timing of his death, Reed may have eliminated him just before taking Amber. The investigation had entered unexpected territory. If Reed was killing fellow Enterprise members, the scenario was more complex than they'd initially theorized. The discovery prompted Mitchell to revisit Amber's research, focusing on connections between Reed and Simmons. Among her encrypted files was a document suggesting that Simmons had been Reed's handler during Operation Nightshade, and later, his contact when Reed joined the Enterprise. More intriguingly, Amber had flagged financial transactions showing Simmons withdrawing large sums from offshore accounts in the weeks before his death. He was preparing to run, Mitchell concluded. Something spooked both of them around the same time Amber started investigating. The technical team made another breakthrough by recovering deleted emails from Amber's cloud backup. Messages between Amber and an anonymous account revealed that her original source, her whistleblower, was none other than Walter Simmons himself. Simmons was feeding her information about the Enterprise, Mitchell told Keller. Maybe having a crisis of conscience, or maybe he was just afraid of something and wanted insurance. The final email from Simmons to Amber was particularly chilling. They know about both of us now. Reed has been tasked with cleanup. Trust no one with a badge. As this new information circulated among the investigation team, another discovery emerged from Amber's digital footprint. Her browser history showed that on Sunday night, hours before her disappearance, she had been researching remote airfields within a 100-mile radius of Springfield. She was planning an escape route, Mitchell realized, but Reed got to her first. The team identified 3 small private airstrips that matched Amber's search criteria. Records for one of them, a rarely used facility called Clayton Field, 50 miles northwest of Springfield, showed an unregistered flight departing early Monday morning, destination unlisted. Security footage from the airfield's single camera captured grainy images of a dark sedan arriving at 5:47 a.m. 2 figures exited the vehicle, a man matching Reed's description, and a woman who appeared to be supporting herself with difficulty, suggesting she was injured or drugged. She was alive when they left, Mitchell said, studying the timestamp. And based on Simmons's body and this flight, Reed wasn't just running from exposure, he was cleaning up loose ends for the Enterprise. The flight plan, though officially unlisted, was recovered from backup systems. The destination was a small airfield outside Toronto, Canada. Canadian authorities were immediately notified, but preliminary reports indicated the plane had landed, refueled, and departed again for an unknown location before the alert was received. As the 6th day of the investigation began, the focus shifted from a missing persons case to an international manhunt. Border alerts were issued, intelligence agencies were briefed, and Amber Lockwood's photograph was distributed to law enforcement worldwide. What no one yet realized was that Reed had not been acting alone in the abduction, and that the conspiracy Amber had uncovered extended into the very heart of the agencies now searching for her. The digital breadcrumbs she had left behind were leading investigators toward a truth far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. And somewhere, possibly beyond American borders, Amber Lockwood remained in the hands of a man trained by the government to make people disappear without a trace. 7 days into the investigation, the case had evolved from a local disappearance into an international incident. Interpol had issued a red notice for Maxwell Reed, and Canadian authorities were conducting extensive searches around the Toronto airfield where the unregistered plane had briefly landed. In Springfield, Detective Mitchell found himself increasingly sidelined as federal agencies took control of the investigation. The FBI had established a command center at their field office, with Agent Keller serving as the official liaison to local law enforcement. Mitchell was permitted to observe briefings, but noticed that certain information was being shared only among federal personnel. "They're compartmentalizing," Mitchell told his partner, Ramirez, as they reviewed case files at the Springfield Police Department. "Keller takes my calls, but I can tell she's holding back." Ramirez nodded. "After what Amber uncovered about FBI connections to the enterprise, can you blame them? They're dealing with potential corruption in their own ranks." The investigation had reached a critical juncture when a new lead emerged from an unexpected source. Jason Brenner, the journalist Amber had contacted, published a carefully worded article in the Springfield Tribune titled "Local Teacher's Disappearance, Linked to Former Federal Agent." Though light on specifics, presumably to protect himself, the article mentioned an anonymous source claiming that Amber had uncovered a network of former intelligence operatives conducting unauthorized operations on American soil. Hours after the article appeared online, Brenner contacted Mitchell directly. "I've received something you need to see," the journalist said, his voice tight with tension. "A package delivered to my office this morning. No return address, but the postmark is from Toronto." The package contained a USB drive and a handwritten note in what forensic analysts would later confirm was Amber Lockwood's handwriting. "Insurance policy. Publish if I don't contact you by May 30th. The drive held a video file recorded on Amber's phone. The footage, shakily captured in what appeared to be a moving vehicle, showed Amber speaking hurriedly. "This is Amber Lockwood, and I'm recording this on Monday, May 16th at approximately 4:30 a.m. I've been abducted from my apartment by Maxwell Reed, known locally as Leland Haynes. He is armed and has threatened to kill me if I don't cooperate." The camera briefly panned to show she was in the back seat of a car, her hands bound with zip ties. Reed claims he's not working alone, that a faction within the enterprise has ordered what he calls a comprehensive cleanup after Walter Simmons began leaking information. Reed says he's been tasked with eliminating both Simmons and me, along with retrieving all documentation of their operations. Her voice lowered, and she glanced nervously toward the front of the vehicle, where the driver, presumably Reed, remained just out of frame. "I've convinced Reed that I've hidden evidence in multiple locations that will be automatically released if I don't deactivate certain protocols. This isn't entirely true, but it's keeping me alive for now. We're heading to an airfield where another operative will meet us. I believe they plan to take me to a secondary location for interrogation." The video ended abruptly, but its implications were clear. Amber had been alive after her abduction and had managed to secretly record and send evidence of her situation. Mitchell immediately shared the video with Keller, who appeared genuinely surprised by its contents. "This changes our timeline," she acknowledged, "and confirms Reed wasn't acting alone." The video's metadata revealed something else significant: precise GPS coordinates captured at the moment of recording. The location matched a rural road leading toward Clayton Field, confirming their previous findings about the escape route. "She was thinking like an investigator even while being abducted," Mitchell noted with grim admiration, "leaving breadcrumbs for us to follow." While the FBI coordinated with Canadian authorities, Mitchell focused on the storage unit where they'd found Amber's journal and Reed's files. Something about the scene had bothered him from the beginning. It felt too convenient, too deliberately arranged. Returning to the facility with a forensic team, Mitchell ordered a more thorough examination of the unit itself, not just its contents. The technicians discovered a small camera disguised as a smoke detector, mounted in the corner of the ceiling. It was recording who accessed the unit, the tech explained, carefully removing the device, and transmitting the data wirelessly. The camera's memory card contained footage of their initial search of the unit, as well as someone else who had entered 2 days later, a man in a maintenance uniform who spent nearly 20 minutes examining the files they'd discovered. He was checking what we found, Mitchell realized. Reed left this breadcrumb trail deliberately, and someone's been monitoring our progress. Facial recognition identified the maintenance worker as Thomas Vega, a former intelligence contractor now working as a security consultant. More troublingly, his company had been hired by the FBI for the past 3 years. When Mitchell brought this information to Keller, her reaction was measured. "I'll notify internal affairs," she said, "but keep this between us for now. If the Enterprise has people inside the Bureau, we need to be careful who we trust." The investigation accelerated when Canadian authorities reported that the plane that had departed Toronto had filed a new flight plan for northern Mexico. Mexican law enforcement was alerted, but by the time they reached the small airstrip near Monterrey, the aircraft had already departed again. Surveillance footage from the Mexican airfield showed 3 people boarding a different plane. Reed, a man identified as Gabriel Torres, another former intelligence operative, and a woman who appeared to be Amber Lockwood. Though her face was partially obscured, she was walking under her own power, suggesting she remained alive. "They're island hopping," Keller explained. "Changing planes, changing identities at each stop. It's a standard exfiltration technique for high-value assets." The breakthrough that would ultimately crack the case came from Amber herself. The technical team analyzing her digital footprint discovered a dormant email account she had created months earlier. The account had been set up with an automated message scheduled to send, if not cancelled, every 72 hours. When Amber disappeared, the failsafe activated, sending identical emails to several recipients: Brenner, her sister Vanessa, and a generic FBI tip line. The email contained coordinates for a location in Springfield, a rented garage unit registered under Amber's name. Inside, investigators discovered a comprehensive backup of all her research, including material not found in her apartment or the storage unit. Most critically, the files included detailed information about what she termed the Enterprise's extraction protocol, procedures for removing operatives from the United States when their covers were compromised. The document outlined a network of safe houses, transportation routes, and contact methods spanning multiple countries. This is why they took her alive, Mitchell realized. They needed to know how much she knew about their escape routes and who else had the information. Among the documents was a list of properties owned by shell companies connected to the Enterprise. One location stood out, a remote compound in Costa Rica, described in Amber's notes as the retreat, where senior operatives could disappear when necessary. Within hours, Costa Rican authorities, working with American intelligence, located the compound nestled in dense jungle, approximately 50 miles from the nearest significant settlement. Satellite imagery showed recent activity, including vehicles matching descriptions of those seen at the Mexican airfield. As an international task force prepared to raid the compound, Mitchell received an unexpected call from an unlisted number. The voice on the other end was familiar, though strained. "Detective Mitchell," said Maxwell Reed. "I'm calling to propose an exchange." "We don't negotiate with kidnappers," Mitchell replied, signaling to the technical team to trace the call. "I'm not negotiating," Reed said calmly. "I'm offering you a choice. You can continue pursuing me, and you might eventually catch me, or you can focus on the people who actually ordered this operation, the ones who sent me after Amber Lockwood and Walter Simmons. Why would I trust anything you say? Because I'm sending you proof. Amber Lockwood isn't just investigating the Enterprise. She stumbled onto something bigger. Operation Shadowfall, domestic surveillance beyond anything the public knows about. The program has been running for 15 years, targeting American citizens, authorized at the highest levels. "Where is Amber now?" Mitchell demanded. "Safe, for the moment. But the people I work for have decided she knows too much, and they've dispatched another team to tie up loose ends, including me. I have maybe 48 hours before they find us." The call ended abruptly, but moments later, Mitchell's phone received a file transfer containing classified documents with recent timestamps. The materials outlined a surveillance program of staggering scope, along with a list of officials involved in its authorization and oversight. 3 names on the list were particularly notable: senior FBI executives currently managing the investigation into Amber's disappearance. Mitchell stared at the screen, the implications becoming clear. The people directing the search for Amber Lockwood were the same ones who had ordered her abduction, and now Reed and Amber had become liabilities to be eliminated. The investigation had reached a dangerous turning point. Mitchell had evidence of corruption at the highest levels of federal law enforcement, but no way to know who he could trust. Meanwhile, somewhere in Costa Rica, Amber Lockwood remained caught between a rogue operative and the shadow organization they both had exposed. What no one yet realized was that Amber had prepared for this possibility and had left behind one final insurance policy that would soon upend the entire investigation. Day 13 of Amber Lockwood's disappearance began with an unprecedented security protocol at the Springfield Police Department. Detective Mitchell had initiated what he termed information quarantine, sharing the documents provided by Reed with only his most trusted colleagues and deliberately excluding federal agencies from the latest developments. If Reed is telling the truth, we can't risk alerting the very people who ordered Amber's abduction, Mitchell explained to Chief Walters in a secure conference room. The walls were lined with printouts of the classified documents, surveillance photos, and connection maps linking senior FBI officials to the Enterprise and Operation Shadowfall. Chief Walters studied the evidence with growing concern. These allegations go beyond anything I've seen in 30 years of law enforcement, if even half of this is legitimate. It's legitimate, Mitchell confirmed. We've verified multiple aspects independently. The offshore accounts exist, the surveillance program is real, and 3 of the officials currently directing Amber's case are directly implicated. The dilemma they faced was substantial: how to rescue Amber and bring her abductors to justice when the traditional channels for such operations were compromised. Mitchell had already placed Agent Keller under discreet surveillance, uncertain whether she was complicit or merely following orders from corrupted superiors. The solution came from an unexpected source. Jason Brenner, the journalist who had received Amber's insurance policy, revealed that he had connections to a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter at the Washington Post. Through this contact, Mitchell established a secure communication channel with the Department of Justice's Inspector General, an oversight authority with the power to investigate the FBI itself. "We need to move quickly but carefully," the Inspector General's representative advised during an encrypted video conference. "If these allegations are substantiated, it represents one of the most significant breaches of public trust in federal law enforcement history." Within hours, a covert team of DOJ investigators arrived in Springfield, operating under the guise of an administrative audit. Their actual mission was to verify Mitchell's evidence and prepare for coordinated action against the implicated officials. Meanwhile, the technical team analyzing Reed's phone call had managed to triangulate its origin to within a 15-mile radius in Costa Rica's Guanacaste province, a different location than the compound initially identified, suggesting Reed had moved Amber to avoid the team sent to clean up the situation. Mitchell received a second call from Reed 24 hours later. "Your federal colleagues are closing in," Reed said without preamble. "Not the ones you're working with, the other team, the cleaners." "How do I know Amber is still alive?" Mitchell demanded. There was a pause, then Amber's voice came through, shaky but determined. "Detective Mitchell, it's Amber Lockwood, I'm alive. Reed is—" Her voice cut off abruptly. Reed returned to the line. "That's all you get for now. I've sent coordinates to your personal email. Come alone or she dies, you have 36 hours. The message presented an impossible choice. Follow Reed's demands and potentially walk into a trap, or refuse and risk Amber's life. Mitchell shared the development with the DOJ team, who immediately began planning a covert extraction operation. "We can't send U.S. personnel officially," the team leader explained, "not without alerting the compromised FBI leadership. But we have trusted contacts in Costa Rican law enforcement who can assist." While the extraction team made preparations, Mitchell continued investigating the 3 FBI officials implicated in the conspiracy. Financial records showed patterns consistent with bribery, large deposits to offshore accounts, following key decisions that benefited certain corporations and political figures. More disturbingly, personnel files revealed that these officials had been responsible for the strategic reassignment of agents who had inadvertently gotten close to Enterprise operations over the years. Careers had been redirected, investigations quietly closed, evidence mysteriously lost, all orchestrated to protect the Shadow Network. The most damning evidence came from Amber's final backup files. She had meticulously documented how Operation Shadowfall had evolved from a legitimate counter-terrorism program into a tool for political and corporate surveillance, targeting journalists, activists, and whistleblowers who threatened powerful interests. The Enterprise had emerged as the operational arm of this system, providing deniability through its use of former rather than current intelligence personnel. 30 hours after Reed's call, Mitchell found himself on a chartered plane to Costa Rica, accompanied by 2 DOJ investigators posing as colleagues and a 4-person tactical team disguised as security consultants. Simultaneously, arrest warrants were being prepared for the 3 FBI officials, with plans to execute them the moment Amber was secured. The coordinates Reed had provided led to an isolated beach house on Costa Rica's Pacific coast. Satellite imagery showed minimal security, suggesting either a trap or a genuine desire for a discreet exchange. Costa Rican authorities established a perimeter at a distance, while Mitchell approached the house alone, wearing a concealed camera and microphone that transmitted to the extraction team. His sidearm remained holstered, a calculated risk to demonstrate good faith. The beach house door opened before Mitchell could knock. Maxwell Reed stood in the doorway, his appearance markedly different from his Springfield persona. Gone was the carefully maintained facade of a retired consultant. The man before Mitchell was clearly a hardened operative, vigilant, calculating, and dangerous. "Detective," Reed acknowledged, stepping aside to allow Mitchell entry. "You came alone. Wise decision." Inside, Mitchell found Amber Lockwood seated at a wooden table, pale but outwardly unharmed. Her eyes registered recognition and relief at the sight of Mitchell. "Are you all right?" Mitchell asked her directly. Amber nodded. "Physically, yes." Her voice was steady despite the circumstances. Reed remained standing, positioned to observe both Mitchell and the approaches to the house. "Let's be clear about the situation, Detective. I didn't bring you here out of altruism. I need guarantees." "I'm not authorized to make deals," Mitchell replied honestly. "You misunderstand. I don't want immunity. That ship sailed long ago." Reed placed a flash drive on the table. "This contains everything. Operational details of the Enterprise, client lists, mission reports, financial transfers. Enough to dismantle the entire network." "Why give this up now?" Mitchell asked. Reed's expression hardened. "Because the people who run this system crossed a line. Surveillance is one thing. Elimination of American citizens on American soil is another. When they ordered me to kill Amber and Walter, they broke our arrangement." "You still abducted her," Mitchell pointed out. "To protect her," Reed countered. "And myself. Once they issued the order, our only chance was to disappear together. I needed her knowledge of their extraction protocols, and she needed my ability to implement them." Amber spoke up. "It's true. He could have killed me multiple times. Instead, he's been negotiating for both our safety." Mitchell processed this unexpected alliance between captive and captor. "What do you want in exchange for your cooperation?" "Witness protection. For both of us." Reed's gaze was unwavering. "Separate locations, new identities, complete disassociation from this case publicly. In return, I'll testify against everyone involved, including myself." Before Mitchell could respond, a notification tone sounded from Reed's phone. He checked the screen, his expression darkening. "They've found us. Perimeter alarm was triggered 3 minutes ago." Reed moved to a laptop showing security camera feeds. 4-man team, tactical gear, approaching from the North Beach access. "My extraction team?" Mitchell asked. Reed shook his head. "Your team would approach openly. These men are moving in a direct assault pattern." He retrieved a go bag and tossed a second one to Amber. "Back exit. Now." What followed was a precisely executed escape plan. Reed led them through a concealed tunnel beneath the house, emerging 50 yards away in dense vegetation. As they moved toward a prearranged extraction point, gunfire erupted behind them, the cleanup team engaging with Costa Rican authorities who had moved in when the situation escalated. The extraction succeeded, though not without casualties. 2 Costa Rican officers were wounded in the exchange of fire, while one of the attackers was killed and another captured. Analysis would later confirm they were private military contractors with indirect connections to the compromised FBI officials. 48 hours later, coordinated raids across Washington, D.C., New York and Virginia resulted in the arrest of 27 individuals connected to the Enterprise and Operation Shadowfall, including the 3 senior FBI officials. The evidence provided by Reed, combined with Amber's meticulous documentation, presented a case so overwhelming that multiple defendants began negotiating plea agreements within days. True to the agreement, neither Reed nor Amber appeared publicly in connection with the case. Official statements described Amber's recovery as the result of international law enforcement cooperation, with no mention of Reed's role or the broader conspiracy. Both entered witness protection, their testimonies preserved in sealed depositions that would only be used if absolutely necessary for prosecution. 3 months after her disappearance, Amber Lockwood was legally declared deceased, a fiction necessary to complete her disappearance from her former life. The woman, who had been a dedicated history teacher, now lived under a new name in a different state, her true fate known only to a handful of officials with the highest security clearances. Maxwell Reed similarly vanished into the witness protection system, though rumors occasionally surfaced in intelligence circles about a former operative who had brought down an entire shadow network. In Springfield, Detective Trent Mitchell received a commendation for his work on the case, though the public citation mentioned only his extraordinary dedication in investigating a missing persons case. He never spoke publicly about what really happened to Amber Lockwood, honoring the agreement that had secured her safety. The final chapter of the case was written a year later, when the trials of the Enterprise's leadership concluded with multiple convictions for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and in 3 cases, accessory to murder. The full extent of Operation Shadowfall remained classified, but enough details emerged to prompt congressional hearings and significant reforms in intelligence oversight. In an unmarked location, a woman who was once Amber Lockwood watched the news of the convictions on television, feeling a complex mixture of vindication, loss, and resolution. The truth she had uncovered at such personal cost had finally been exposed, even if her role in revealing it would remain forever hidden from the public record. Justice, in its imperfect way, had been served.